Because the sale of virtual goods has become big business. In fact, raking in over $7 billion. That's per year. Zynga is the biggest maker of games on Facebook. It is in talks to raise hundreds of million dollars in new funding. And sources say Zynga could be valued at between $7 and $9 billion. Joining me right next to me here in the newsroom is Bob Rice. He's managing partner at Tangent Capital, and he founded and sold his 3D software firm in the 90s, is involved now in angel investing in New York. Bob, always glad to see you. So $7 to $9 billion, all just for you to offer me a pig online. Like, how crazy is this?
It's crazy, but, you know, and I'm a traditionalist, so I would love to say this is absolutely nuts. But when you look at the growth that they're going through and you look at their margins, because after all, the cost of goods sold is wonderful, right? Zero. So that's good. They've got $800 million in revenues after only 3 years, $400 million in profit, which is fantastic. And so when you look at that kind of valuation, you have to say, gee, it's frothy, but maybe it's not so crazy.
And it just reinforces this idea that social is everything. For those who didn't know or didn't believe it, this is confirmation, right?
Social and mobile are everything. And one of the reasons that Zynga works is because you're friends in the real world with the people that you're exchanging gifts for. So if I leave you a pig, you need to leave me a tractor the next day.
That's right. I'm taking a look at some of the video here, some bales of hay to go with it. I want to pick up on something that you just said about mobile and the fact that mobile, along with social, is, if you're an investor, sort of a key trend to watch. And you've made an argument that the mobile world is actually bad for Google.
I think it's a serious problem for Google in the long run. Of course, Google's making a lot of money, and everybody tends to think because it is now, it will continue. But one of the most profound shifts we've ever seen in computing is going on right now. In this year, we're going to have, for the first time, the sale of smartphones and tablets is going to exceed the sale of desktops and laptops. So that's the fundamental ground shift to mobile computing.
So that's how people are getting data, is basically on their cell phones.
That's exactly right. And what they tend to do with mobile computing platforms is play games and look up maps. And they're not doing the kind of searching that they do on their desktops and their laptops, which is the heart and soul of Google's revenue stream.
And you also said, you know, we've been covering the story about this deal between Nokia and Microsoft. And you said, look, this is a sleeper deal. People aren't really paying enough attention. This is also bad for Google.
It's very bad for Google. This is a huge win for Microsoft. People are not paying this nearly enough attention because Nokia still controls 25% of the handset market. So, it
has the biggest share.
It has the biggest share, and this new Microsoft Phone Software 7 is absolutely fantastic.
Because you've tried it out, right?
I have. The techies all love it, universally rave reviews. So if this software takes on to a handset that has 25% penetration, suddenly Android doesn't have the dominant position vis-a-vis Apple that it did, and those are the three horses to watch.
So, Bob, I mean, we've been saying all along, watching just Microsoft stock, that, okay, it's a blue chip, it's not a growth stock, it's just a hold steady, but you're saying essentially don't count Microsoft out on this.
Don't count them out. One of the things I really love about this for Microsoft also is that it leverages strengths that they really have, like Xbox Live you can play now on your phone, and so it's leveraging pieces of the business that people have almost forgotten about in a very powerful way.
I want to talk about Facebook as well. You make the argument that Facebook could be this decade's AOL. Why is that?
Well, right. I like to get people thinking. But people right now are kind of hyperventilating about Facebook, and they think it's the mother of all social networks, and therefore it's going to dominate the world for the rest of the decade. And I really don't think that that's true. I mean, think back what happened to AOL. It was in a totally dominant position. Think about what happened to MySpace very recently. The problem for Facebook isn't that there's going to be another Facebook. The problem is that people are going to migrate to more focused sharing that works around their actual interests in the real world. And the funny thing is, that's where the money is, because you want to catch people at the point of economic activity. And so focused social networks are a real threat to Facebook over time.
All right. We were talking about Facebook's frenemies, and you have made the argument that Facebook is this decade's AOL, which is probably pretty scary for some people who have been investing in Facebook and the rest of the true believers, I guess.
$52 billion valuations. Yeah, that seems a little high to me.
But you make the argument that AOL was actually in a better position 10 years ago, sort of this analogy, than Facebook is now. Why is that?
Sure, because they controlled your email, they controlled everyone's email, they controlled everyone's access to the internet, and they were making fountains and fountains of money at the same time. My point isn't exactly, of course, that Facebook is AOL. My point is that people need to understand that things are changing at an incredible pace, and even companies that are in apparently utterly dominant positions can fall from those positions very quickly, not because someone becomes the new AOL or because someone becomes the new Facebook, but because habits change, and the way we use these devices are changing very, very rapidly.
So some of the other types of networking that challenge, that could sort of chip away at Facebook's empire, is there a top 3 list?
Well, I think the number one thing that people have to understand, again, is it's about hobbies and activities more than it is anything else. So, and that's where the money is made. So if you look at something like LinkedIn, for example, LinkedIn is really making money. How? Because it's got a job board.
It's a very specific cause.
Very specific, exactly right. And so these are the kinds of things, these specific kinds of social networks. People share around music, for example, and that's where Apple has a huge advantage because they control the handset. They've got iTunes, and so people like to share music.
And so Ping, right?
So Ping is the Apple social network, and I think that's a real threat to Google over time.
And we've talked about Groupon. I mean, we were talking about even Zynga earlier. So to your point, all these sort of specific niche domains will chip away at Facebook's empire.
Mint for money. People, that's a really important thing for people. They like to talk and spend time around their money activities. And so Mint can turn into a social network that can chip away. And all of these things, nobody is going to replace Facebook. No one's going to replace them. But what is going to happen is that the people are going to slowly migrate away and spend more and more time on the things that they're specifically interested in instead of the general social network.
And even sort of, we've talked a lot about the fact that the internet has no borders, but yet there are local sites that are threats to Facebook's world domination. As I don't know, Mixi in Japan.
It's huge. Of course, this is definitely true. And also, you've got regulatory risk, significant regulatory risk and privacy concerns in all of these foreign countries. And so you can't just sit back and say that Facebook's current trends are going to continue and continue. And the reality is that if you look at their advertising revenue, it's not that impressive given their usage. And the reason is that the click-through rates on those ads are not up to industry standards.
All right, Bob. So as you say, everything's changing so fast, and no one, even if you're at the top, stays there for long. So if you happen to be at the top, take heed. Words of wisdom there from Bob Rice. Bob, thanks very much. Bob Rice joining us there from Tangent Capital.